The world had always been dark for her. No colors, no shapes, just a deep, endless black. She had never known what it was like to see. Her name was Yara, and she was an alien girl from a distant planet. Her people, the Zora, were known for their strength, their skills, but Yara was different. Born blind, she had lived in a world of sound, smell, and touch every day. She relied on her senses to understand her surroundings. But there was always something missing. Yara's home was a small, quiet settlement, far from the busy cities of her world. She had learned to live with her blindness, to adapt. She was not sad, not anymore. She had learned to find joy in the little, things like the sound of the wind, the feel of rain on her skin, or the smell of the flowers that bloomed in the fields. She had friends, but none of them knew the true weight of what it felt like to live in darkness. Then, one day, something changed. A human came to her world. He was a scientist, one of the few humans who had ever traveled to the Zora planet. His name was Dr. Ethan Clark. He was tall, with short brown hair and glasses that always seemed to be slipping down his nose. He had come to study the Zora, to learn about their advanced technology, their ways of living. But when he saw Yara, something inside him changed. Dr. Clark had a reputation for solving problems, for inventing new things. He was brilliant, but he had never met someone like Yara. Her blindness fascinated him. He had heard stories about how Zora's people could do things humans couldn't even imagine, but he had never thought about a solution for something like Yara's condition. He spent days studying her, watching how she interacted with the world. It was clear she was strong, intelligent, and capable despite her blindness. But Dr. Clark couldn't shake the feeling that something should be done to help her. One evening, after days of thinking and experimenting, Dr. Clark finally had an idea. He had been working on a prototype, something that could change the world. A visor. It wasn't just a regular visor, though. This one was designed to help blind people see. He had never tested it on an alien before, but he felt a strange sense of hope that this could work. Yara was curious when he approached her with the device in his hands. It was small, round, and sleek, like a pair of glasses with no lenses. Dr. Clark carefully placed it in her hands and explained how it worked. "Yara, I want to help you see," he said, his voice full of excitement. "This visor, it'll let you see the world, the colors, the shapes, all of it." Yara didn't know what to think. She had never seen anything before, so how could she understand what it meant to see? But something about Dr. Clark's voice made her trust him. He seemed kind, and there was a warmth in his eyes that made her feel safe. She agreed to try it. Dr. Clark gently placed the visor on her face, adjusting it until it fit comfortably. He told her to relax, and for a moment, Yara did nothing but listen to the soft hum of the machine. Then, slowly, she began to feel something strange, a warmth, almost like a light, starting in the back of her mind. And then something changed. For the first time in her life, Yara saw light. Not just light, but colors. She blinked, and the colors swirled around her like a dream. Red, blue, green, and yellow danced before her eyes. She gasped, her breath catching in her throat as she took in the world she had never known. It was like nothing she had ever imagined. She could see the trees, their leaves shimmering in the sunlight. She could see the sky, the way the clouds moved and shifted in the breeze. She could see the ground beneath her feet, the way the grass swayed in the wind. And in front of her, there was Dr. Clark, his face full of wonder. "Do you see?" he asked softly. Yara could barely speak. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. She had never known what it was like to see, to truly see. It was overwhelming, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. For a long moment, Yara didn't know what to do. She took slow, cautious steps, moving toward a nearby tree. She reached out and touched the bark, feeling the texture with her fingers. As she stared at it with her new eyes, the world was a blur of colors and shapes, and she couldn't believe what she was seeing. It was like a dream. But as she looked around, something strange happened. Her heart began to race. She felt a cold chill on the back of her neck, as if she wasn't alone anymore. In the distance, she saw something, four figures moving swiftly toward her. They were soldiers, dressed in dark armor, their faces hidden behind masks. They were coming for Dr. Clark. Yara's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't know who they were, but she could feel the danger in the air. The visor, this gift that had given her sight, had also made her a target. The soldiers were coming for the one who had helped her, and Yara knew, without a doubt, that her world was about to change forever. Yara couldn't remember the last time she had felt so alive. Every step she took, every color she saw, seemed like a gift she never thought possible. The world had opened up to her in ways she had only dreamed of. She spent hours in the fields, gazing up at the sky, studying the shapes of the clouds as they drifted lazily across the horizon. She could see the birds soaring overhead, their wings slicing through the air, their calls echoing in the distance. It was all so beautiful, so real. Dr. Clark stayed close, guiding her with gentle words, but always giving her the space to explore on her own. He was excited, too, watching her reaction to the world she had never known. For him, this was a breakthrough, an achievement he had been working toward for years. But for Yara, it was more than just technology. It was freedom. She no longer felt like an outsider in her own world. But as the days passed, that freedom began to feel more like a cage. There was a growing tension in the air, an unease that Yara couldn't shake. It was as if something was waiting, watching from the shadows. Every time she stepped outside, she would catch a glimpse of something movement at the edge of her vision. Shadows darting between the trees. She couldn't make sense of it, but her instincts told her she was not alone. Dr. Clark noticed it too. His usual calm demeanor was starting to slip. There were times when Yara would look up and see him staring off into the distance, his face tense with worry. At night, he would spend hours in his lab, his brow furrowed as he worked on new modifications to the visor. Yara didn't fully understand what he was doing, but she knew something wasn't right. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep shade of purple, Dr. Clark sat down next to her. The cool evening air wrapped around them, and the stars began to twinkle high above. "Yara," he said, his voice low, "there's something I need to tell you. There are others out there, people who might not want what we've done." Yara turned to face him, her heart racing. "What do you mean?" Dr. Clark looked out into the distance, his gaze distant and troubled. "I didn't expect this to happen. I thought we'd have more time before the technology got out. But now it's too late." Yara's confusion deepened. What are you talking about? Who are these people?" "The soldiers," Dr. Clark said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They've been watching us. They know about the visor. They know what we've done." Yara's mind raced. Soldiers? What did they want with her? With Dr. Clark? She had never known the fear of war or conflict. Her people were peaceful, living quietly in their corner of the galaxy. But now, her world was being turned upside down. Dr. Clark stood up and began pacing, his hands wringing in frustration. "They'll come for us, Yara. It's only a matter of time. They won't stop until they have that technology, and they'll do whatever it takes to get it." Yara felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. The visor, the gift she had been given, had already started to cause problems, but she didn't understand why it was so dangerous. Why would anyone want to take it from her? "They're not just any soldiers," Dr. Clark continued, his voice grim. "They're elite, highly trained. I've heard stories about them, about how they'll stop at nothing to get what they want. And now that they know what we've created, they'll come for us. They'll come for you." The weight of his words sank in Yara's newfound sight. The thing that had given her so much hope was now a target. She didn't know who these soldiers were or what they wanted, but she knew one thing for sure: they would stop at nothing to take what they felt was theirs. The wind howled through the trees, and the stars above seemed to dim, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. That night, as Yara lay awake, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something dangerous. The shadows outside her window seemed to move with purpose, and she could hear the faintest sounds: the crackle of static, the snap of a twig breaking, as if someone or something was out there, waiting. In the silence of the night, Yara could feel her heart beat faster. She knew the storm was approaching, but what she didn't know was how much her life was about to change. She had always lived in darkness, but now, with the gift of sight, She could see the danger approaching, and she was terrified. The days that followed were filled with whispers. In the quiet corners of Yara's mind, something gnawed at her. She couldn't shake the feeling that the world she had just begun to see was already slipping through her fingers. Dr. Clark's warnings echoed in her head, the weight of his words pressing heavily on her chest. She had only just discovered what it meant to see, and know she was about to lose it all. On a cold morning, when the first light of day began to break through the thick fog, the calm that had settled over the settlement shattered. Yara woke to the sound of distant voices, harsh and urgent, carried by the wind. The peaceful world she had come to love felt suddenly oppressive, like a trap closing in around her. Yara. Dr. Clark's voice was soft but strained as he appeared at her door, his face pale, eyes wide with panic. "They've found us." Yara's heart skipped a beat. She knew what he meant. The soldiers, the elite force Dr. Clark had spoken of. They were here, and they weren't coming to negotiate. Without a word, Dr. Clark led her to a small, hidden room at the back of his lab, a place she had never seen before. It was dark and cold, with only a faint light from a cracked window that barely let in the sunlight. She could hear the sound of boots pounding outside, the unmistakable rhythm of soldiers on the march. "They're closing in," Dr. Clark muttered. His hands were shaking as he fumbled with the controls of a nearby console, trying to access the security systems. But there was no time. They had already breached the perimeter. Yara felt a cold chill spread through her. The once peaceful settlement now felt like a cage. She could hear the soldiers' voices, their commands sharp and cold. They were looking for something, and they would tear through everything to get it. But what did they want with her? What was so important about the visor? "Stay here," Dr. Clark said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll keep them distracted. You have to hide, Yara. You have to stay out of their reach." Yara's hands trembled as she nodded. Her mind was spinning, her thoughts racing. She had barely begun to understand the world around her, and now she was being forced to hide from it, forced to run from the very thing that had given her a glimpse of freedom. But her trust in Dr. Clark ran deep. He had given her sight. Now she had to trust him. The door creaked open, and Dr. Clark stepped out, leaving Yara alone in the darkness. She could hear the sounds of scuffling and shouting in the distance. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to make herself as small as possible. Her breath came in short bursts as she listened for any sign of danger. The fear was almost overwhelming that suddenly there was a loud crash, followed by a harsh voice, one Yara recognized even in her state of panic. "Where is the human?" the voice demanded. "The one who created the visor." "We know he's here." Yara's blood ran cold. The soldiers were close. They knew who Dr. Clark was. They were here for him and for the visor. She had to do something. She couldn't just hide. She couldn't let them take him. For the first time since her blindness had been lifted, Yara could see the full weight of the consequences. Her gift of sight had brought her joy, but now it was also a curse. It had made her a target. Dr. Clark had warned her that the visor would bring danger, but she never imagined it would come so quickly. She never imagined that her life and the life of the man who had given her everything would be thrown into such peril. She took a deep breath, her pulse pounding in her ears. Her thoughts were clear now. She couldn't stay hidden. She couldn't let them take Dr. Clark without a fight. She was no longer the blind girl from a quiet corner of the galaxy. She was someone who could see and who would fight for the one who had made that possible. With one last glance toward the door, Yara stepped out of the shadows. She was going to save him. Yara's heart pounded in her chest as she sprinted through the darkened halls of Dr. Clark's lab. The sound of heavy boots echoed behind her, growing louder with each passing moment. The soldiers were close, too close, but she couldn't stop. Not now. Her senses, sharpened by the visor, guided her through the maze of corridors. Every turn, every movement felt more calculated than before. She could see it all: the cold, sterile walls, the blinking lights of machinery, the shadows that seemed to reach out at her. But what she didn't see were the soldiers yet. She paused for a brief moment to catch her breath, pressing her back against the cold steel of the wall. The visor gave her sight, but it didn't make her invincible. She wasn't trained to fight. She was an alien girl who had only just learned how to walk in a world of light. The voices of the soldiers grew louder. She could hear them shouting, their footsteps quick and determined. They were searching for her, for Dr. Clark. She could feel the weight of their mission bearing down on her like a shadow pressing against her chest, suffocating her. "He's gone," one of the soldiers barked. "Find the girl. She's the key." Yara's stomach dropped. The key? What did they mean by that? Did they know about the visor? Did they know what it could do? Panic surged through her, but she pushed it aside. She couldn't let fear control her. She had come so far, she wasn't going to let it all be taken away in the blink of an eye. She turned a corner, her mind racing, and saw the elevator just ahead. It was her only chance. She knew it wouldn't take her far, but it might buy her some time. She ran toward it, her feet pounding against the floor, but just as she reached for the button, a sharp voice stopped her dead in her tracks. "Don't move." The voice was familiar, one of the soldiers. He was just steps behind her now, and from the sound of it, there were more of them coming. The elevator doors were closing, but it was too late. She was trapped, her breath caught in her throat. As she spun around to face him, the soldier stood tall, his dark armor reflecting the dim light, his face hidden behind a mask. But Yara could see the coldness in his eyes, the hunger, the certainty that he would catch her. Without thinking, Yara acted. In one swift motion, she reached out and pressed the emergency button, sending the elevator doors into a rapid descent. It was a long shot, but as the soldier lunged forward to grab her, Yara jumped into the elevator just as the doors slammed shut, trapping the soldier. On the outside, the sudden rush of downward speed made her stomach lurch, but she barely noticed it. All she could think about was getting away, getting out of the lab, away from the soldiers, away from the danger that was closing in on her and Dr. Clark. The elevator dropped for what felt like an eternity before it finally came to a jerky halt. The doors slid open, revealing the dark, empty corridors of the lower levels. She stepped out cautiously, her eyes scanning for any signs of movement. She had no plan, no clear direction, just a singular focus: survive. She moved through the halls quickly, using the visor to guide her, but every sense in her body screamed that she wasn't alone. She felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up as though something was watching her. She turned a corner and froze. The air around her shifted, the weight of a presence heavy in the space. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Her heart stopped. It was Dr. Clark, but he wasn't alone. Behind him, a dozen soldiers moved into view, their faces hidden behind their masks, their weapons raised. They had been waiting for her. "Yara," Dr. Clark's voice was calm, almost too calm, but there was something in his eyes that sent a chill down her spine. "I'm sorry. This was the only way." She stared at him, confusion flooding her mind. Why was he with them? Had he betrayed her? "You're not safe here," he said, his voice low, as if pleading. "You have to come with us. It's the only way to protect you." But Yara didn't trust him anymore. She couldn't, not with her life, not with everything she had fought for. "Why?" she whispered, barely able to find her voice. "Why would you do this?" Dr. Clark's eyes softened, but he didn't answer. The soldiers behind him closed in, and she knew there was no escaping now. But then, in the silence of that moment, Yara did something she never thought she'd do. She turned and ran. She ran faster than she ever had before, her legs carrying her through the hallways, past the soldiers, past the chaos that was closing in. She couldn't think. She couldn't process. All she could do was run. As she raced through the corridors, her mind kept screaming one word over and over: escape. She had to escape. There was no other choice. But even as she ran, Yara knew one thing. She wasn't just running from the soldiers. She was running from Dr. Clark too. The man who had given her sight, the man she had trusted, was now just another enemy in her fight for survival. The walls of the lab had long since faded from Yara's mind. Now, it was just a blur of concrete corridors, flickering lights, and the sound of her breath quickening with each step. The weight of the soldiers' pursuit never left her, like a shadow that clung to her every move. She could feel their presence even when she couldn't see them. But there was something worse, something far more terrifying, lurking in the recesses of her mind: Dr. Clark's betrayal. She had trusted him. He had given her the one thing she had always wanted, the ability to see, to experience the world, like never before. And yet, here she was, running from him, from the man who had promised her safety. As Yara continued to flee, the world around her seemed to close in. The walls were no longer just walls. They felt like traps, closing in tighter with every turn. The deeper she went into the facility, the more she felt like a caged animal, desperate to escape. But knowing there was no way out, her mind kept racing, trying to piece together the fragments of what had happened. Why had Dr. Clark sided with the soldiers? Why had he said she wasn't safe? Was he trying to protect her, or had he been working with them all along? The answers seemed to swirl around her, unreachable, but there was no time to dwell on them. There was only one thing that mattered now: survival. The visor she wore, the very gift that had given her sight, was now the reason she was being hunted. The soldiers would stop at nothing to take it from her and to take her out. Yara's thoughts were interrupted by the loud clang of metal as something shifted in the corridor ahead. Her pulse shot up, her instincts screaming for her to move. Without thinking, she turned down another hallway, her footsteps echoing in the silence. But as she rounded the corner, she froze. There, standing at the end of the hall, was a figure. It was tall, almost intimidating in its stillness. Yara's heart skipped a beat, and she raised her hand instinctively, trying to focus the image through the visor. It was Dr. Clark, but this time, his face was different. The warmth she had once seen in his eyes was gone, replaced by something colder, something she didn't recognize. His expression was hard, like a man who had made a choice and was now stuck with it. "Yara," he said, his voice low, almost regretful. "You don't have to run." The words hung in the air like a sickly promise. Yara took a cautious step back, her heart thudding in her chest. She didn't know what to make of him anymore. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you with them?" Dr. Clark's eyes softened for a brief moment, but the soldiers behind him quickly snapped him back into focus. "I didn't have a choice," he replied. "They were going to destroy everything we built if I didn't help them. I thought maybe I could protect you if I stayed close." Yara's mind reeled. This wasn't the man she had trusted. This wasn't the person who had given her the gift of sight. This was someone else, someone who had given up everything they had fought for just to save himself. The soldiers closed in behind Dr. Clark, their weapons drawn, their eyes cold and calculating. Yara's heart raced as she realized what was happening. They weren't just here for the visor anymore. They were here for her. She was the last piece of their plan, the key to unlocking everything they needed. And now, the decision was hers. She could fight, but she knew it wouldn't be easy. The soldiers were trained killers, and Dr. Clark, despite his betrayal, was still the one who had given her the visor. He knew more about it than anyone, or she could run again. But even as that thought crossed her mind, she knew it wasn't a real option anymore. She couldn't outrun them forever, not this time. Not when the world had already been turned upside down. A voice inside her screamed for her to run, to escape, but something else stopped her. It wasn't fear. It was a strange kind of clarity. Yara stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Dr. Clark, her voice steady despite the fear that twisted in her gut. "I trusted you," she said, her words cutting through the silence. "But you've made your choice, and now I'll make mine." In that instant, the weight of the choice fell onto her shoulders. She could continue running, a fugitive forever, or she could take a stand right here, right now. The visor, the gift that had opened her eyes to the world, was also the weapon that would decide her fate. And as she looked at Dr. Clark, she knew that whatever happened next, it would change everything. For both of them, the hallway was eerily silent now, the weight of Yara's decision hanging in the air like a storm about to break. Dr. Clark stood before her, his face hidden behind a mask of regret, but his posture told a different story. Behind him, the soldiers stood at attention, their weapons trained on her. Yara's heart raced, the sound of her pulse pounding in her ears. She had made her choice, but now she had to face the consequences. Dr. Clark's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but he didn't move. "Yara, please," he said, his voice tight. "I never wanted this. I never wanted you to be in danger." Yara stood tall, despite the fear gnawing at her insides. She had learned a hard truth. Trust could be broken in an instant. She had trusted Dr. Clark, but now that trust was shattered. The man who had given her sight had now become a barrier she couldn't get past. "No, Dr. Clark," Yara said, her voice firm, unwavering. "You made your choice, and now I'll make mine." With that, she shifted her stance, eyes narrowing. The visor on her face pulsed with energy, its power humming beneath her skin. For the first time since she had worn it, Yara felt a surge of confidence like a spark waiting to ignite. She wasn't just some blind girl anymore. She was someone who could see the world for what it truly was and who could protect herself from the dangers that lurked in it. That Dr. Clark's gaze hardened. "You don't understand. If you don't come with us now, they'll kill you. They'll kill us both." The soldiers behind him shifted uneasily. Yara could feel the tension building, the air thick with unspoken threats, but she wasn't afraid anymore. "You think I don't understand?" Yara's voice trembled with quiet fury. "I see everything clearly now, Dr. Clark. I see you. I see them. I see the choice you made, and I won't let you use me like this." She turned away from him, ignoring the desperate look in his eyes. With each step she took, she felt the distance between them grow, not just physically, but emotionally. He had abandoned her the moment he chose to side with the soldiers. The visor, the gift he had given her, was now a weapon in her hands, and she wasn't going to let it be used against her. A sudden movement broke her thoughts. One of the soldiers lunged forward, his arm outstretched, aiming to grab her. In the same instant, Yara reacted. Her new vision gave her the edge, allowing her to see his every move, every twitch of muscle before he even made it. In one fluid motion, Yara ducked low, avoiding the soldier's grasp, and kicked out with all her strength. Her foot connected with his chest with a sickening thud, sending him crashing into the wall. He crumpled to the ground, groaning in pain. The other soldiers froze for a split second, stunned by her quick reflexes. But it didn't take long for them to regain their composure. The leader of the group stepped forward. His eyes narrowed beneath his helmet. "You're making a mistake, alien," he growled. "You can't fight all of us." Yara didn't flinch. "I don't need to fight all of you. I just need to survive." In the blink of an eye, she moved again. The visor gave her an advantage she hadn't fully realized until now. With her enhanced vision, she could predict their movements, anticipate where they would strike. She darted past another soldier, avoiding his clumsy attempt to grab her, and used the environment to her advantage. The walls, the corners, the narrow passageways all became her allies in the fight for her life. But as Yara moved, something unexpected happened. She saw a Dr. Clark in her peripheral vision, his face filled with regret as he looked on, helpless. His words echoed in her mind, "If you don't come with us, they'll kill you." He wasn't wrong. She could feel the weight of the soldiers closing in. They weren't just after the visor anymore, they were after her life. With a deep breath, Yara made a decision. She couldn't keep running. She couldn't keep fighting in these narrow halls, hoping for an escape. She needed to end this once and for all. The soldiers were fast, but Yara had learned the power of her own sight. She turned sharply, sprinting toward the back of the hallway, where an open door led to the control room. She could hear the soldiers chasing her, their footsteps pounding, but she had one thing they didn't: surprise. The moment she stepped into the control room, she slammed the door behind her, locking it with a quick press of the button. Yara's breathing came in quick, shallow gasps as she turned toward the control panel. She didn't know exactly how to use it, but she had seen Dr. Clark do it enough times. The panels flashed with lights, codes running across the screen, but it was simple. She just had to disable the facility's security systems. With trembling fingers, she pressed a series of buttons, her mind racing. The lights around her flickered once, twice, and then nothing. The entire facility went dark. The sudden silence was deafening. The soldiers outside would be confused. The cameras were down. The alarms were silent. For the first time, Yara had gained control. She was no longer at their mercy. She was the one calling the shots. She turned away from the panel, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. This wasn't over yet, but she had just gained her first victory. The silence was deafening. The facility, once humming with life and activity, now lay in a stillness that seemed almost unnatural. The lights flickered one last time before dying completely, plunging the world into darkness. Yara's breath came in short, ragged bursts, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear nothing but the soft hum of her own pulse in her ears. The soldiers outside, their movements halted by the sudden power failure, were just as blind as she had once been unable to see anything around them. Trapped in a world without sight, for a moment, Yara felt a strange calm wash over her. She had done it. She had disabled the facility's security systems, giving herself a chance to escape. But even now, she knew it wasn't over. The soldiers would regroup. They would find a way to track her down. The countdown had already begun. Yara's mind raced. The hallway outside the control room was quiet, but she knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. The soldiers were too well-trained, too resourceful. They would adapt quickly. Her only option was to face them head-on and finish this once and for all. The question was how. Her hands clenched into fists, the visor glowing softly against her face. It had given her sight. It had given her strength. And now, it was time to use it one last time. The visor, once a symbol of hope, now felt like a weapon that could tip the scales in her favor. She glanced around the darkened control room. It was small, cramped, but it had one advantage. It was isolated. She could make her stand here, force the soldiers to come to her. The element of surprise was gone, but Yara still had the advantage of her vision. With every move, she knew exactly where they were, exactly how they would react. They wouldn't expect her to fight back, but she was no longer the girl who had fled from danger. She was a survivor, and now she would show them what she was capable of. The first soldier appeared in the doorway, silhouetted by the dim glow of the emergency lights. He moved cautiously, his weapon raised, scanning the room. Yara's breath slowed. She could feel the tension building in the air, like the calm before a storm. As he stepped closer, she made her move. In one swift motion, she darted forward, her feet barely making a sound as they hit the floor. The soldier didn't even see her coming until it was too late. She lunged at him, using her enhanced sight to anticipate his every movement, her body fluid and precise. Before he could react, she grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back and slamming him into the wall with a force that surprised even her. The soldier grunted in pain, but before he could recover, Yara spun around and kicked the weapon from his hand. He staggered back, disoriented. She wasn't giving him the chance to regain control. He tried to raise his fist to strike her, but Yara was faster. She ducked under his arm, using his momentum against him to send him crashing to the ground. With a final push, she pinned him down, her knee pressing into his chest, and held him there. She stared into his eyes, her breath steady and controlled. "Stay down," she said, her voice cold. He didn't move, but the victory was short-lived. Another soldier appeared in the doorway, followed by two more. They had regrouped. Yara could feel the shift in the air, the pressure rising, the realization that the final battle was about to begin. They were prepared for her now. Yara's heart skipped a beat. She was outnumbered, but she wasn't going to back down. They advanced, weapons raised, their movements synchronized, and Yara had only moments to decide what to do next. The room was too small for a fight this intense. She had to think fast. Then it hit her. She glanced around the control room, her mind working quickly. The emergency lights, the panels, the system she had just shut down. She could use it to her advantage. With a quick glance, she saw the control panel on the far side of the room, still faintly illuminated by the emergency lights. She had a plan. She turned toward the soldiers, her eyes locking onto them with a mixture of determination and cold fury. "I'm not running anymore," she said, her voice low and steady. "And neither are you." With that, she darted toward the control panel, her feet moving faster than the soldiers could react. She slid across the floor, her hands flying over the buttons with precision, activating the emergency security lockdown. Again, but this time, she locked the entire building down. The doors sealed, and the walls shifted into place, trapping the soldiers inside. The soldiers lunged toward her, but it was too late. The facility was now their prison. Yara turned toward the exit, her heart pounding, but there was no time to waste. As she stepped out of the control room, she glanced back once more, knowing this was the end of one chapter, but the beginning of another. The soldiers might be trapped, but there were still others out there who would come for her. She couldn't stay in the facility. She couldn't let them track her down again. But for now, she was free. Yara looked up at the night sky through a broken window as she stepped out into the open. The stars twinkled above, a vast, endless universe stretching before her. And for the first time, she didn't feel afraid. She was no longer a girl hiding in the shadows. She was someone who had fought back, someone who had made her stand, and she would keep fighting no matter what came next.